Okay, guys, let's do some handstand training. I'm not warmed up, so I'm going to do some warm up first. Just my normal thoracic extension on the foam roller. Obviously, if anyone pops on, if you've got any questions, just stick them in the box straight away and we can have a look at them. I've got no real plans for my training today. I might do a bit of planche, handstand and planche work. I didn't really do a proper session yesterday. I've done some straight arm presses just for my daily post on Instagram, but it was like a 10-15 minute training session because I drove back from down south. So we went on holiday about 2 to 3 hours south of Perth, and didn't do much training the day before. I done handstand push-ups, one arm handstand session, which was a little bit harder. So I want to do some sort of strength work today with my balance. So a little bit of thoracic. I'm going to open up the hips on the just normal quad stretch up against the wall. Still in the garage at the moment. It's blowing a gale. So right by the beach, and at the moment there's no real protection from any other houses. So the wind comes across from the ocean over there, and it's blowing hard into the front of the house. So if you hear funny swishing noises, that's the wind. So Rosie's here as usual. So I'm just really trying to go into a strong posterior tilt. If you're pretty comfortable with the quad stretches up against the wall, I recommend you move the foot out to the side once you get the knee all the way to the wall, and then see if you can get butt low back to the wall there. Fully open the hip through there. And then I like, as you jump up, to go deeper lunge. So foot further away, try and keep the torso upright, and then push the hip down as you extend backwards, just to fully open through that hip position. Doesn't feel too bad. Sort of swap sides. So just doing a real quick warm up. So quad first. Try to make sure I can get fully back there. I sort of know where I'm going to be once I've opened up, so it doesn't feel too bad. Again, I have coached today, so I've done some stretching at the gym. And then more hip flexor. Okay, and then into hamstrings. Yeah, I always do some sort of forward fold. Normally the one up against the wall if you're flexible. If you're not so flexible with the forward fold positions, maybe go like a single leg or something for hamstring. So up on a box, something like that. I'm going to go forward fold, just check I can get between the wall and my legs. This one's pretty open for me most of the time. Yeah, that's pretty open already. And then I'll just warm up the wrists quickly, and then we'll be ready to do some handstands. Yeah, definitely. I'll do some toe pulls once I've warmed the wrists up. I recommend, it's a bug. I recommend everyone does toe pulls as part of their warm up, especially if they're still working on two-arm handstand window of balance. So make sure the wrists are nice and happy. So probably my favorite one for the wrists is to peel up. So not just pivot at the knuckles, but to try and get through the palms and the fingers as well, at all different angles. So fingers facing back to the side, to the front. And then I'll just do a quick handstand hold. So I like to calibrate when I go into handstand just to feel how everything is for the day. So if I jump up into handstand there, I feel like I've got enough control where I can sort of play around in that position and just feel how everything is on the day. It feels pretty good now.
it is later in the day, and like I say, I have taught a couple of classes and coached some clients today, so everything feels pretty good already. So the balance is there. If you're not up to freestanding level where you can just jump up into a handstand like that, I would definitely go into a chest to wall handstand hold, or feet up on a box or something. Ideally, something where the body is fully open, so hips as well as shoulders. You can open up, so you could do something like this where you go back to wall. You can play with variations of this. Just got to be careful that you don't go through the low back. So I put one leg down behind and then push the shoulders out. So that was a nice sort of shoulder opening exercise under load, because I'm pushing the ground away from me, pushing up towards the ceiling. And then it's nice to swap legs, even though it doesn't change it that much. Obviously, hip flexor, quad involvement's going to be different with one leg to the other. But just watch that one. If you do feel that in the low back, I'll do a separate shoulder stretch if that's the case. Yeah, it's more conditioning. I think it's more from your yoga like positioning and stuff. Used to being on your hands, so doing a few more maybe shorter chest to wall handstand holds, but more of them. So like 20 seconds for sets as opposed to higher time with less sets. You could play around with that. And tuck holds can help as well, but just making sure that you're in a nice strong position all the time. So let's warm up with those toe pulls. So I'm just going to go into a straight handstand position against the wall. So just think if I'm like a pencil or a straight line, and then I lean up against the wall, my line doesn't change. I'm just leaning up against the wall. So that's what we're aiming for here. So if I was this brush, yeah, the line doesn't change whether I'm in a freestanding handstand or whether I'm against the wall. So if I'm against the wall like that, if I pull away from the wall on the toe pull, the shoulder's just going to pull me out, but my line stays exactly the same. The only thing we want it to break is at the shoulder. So if I'm here, so there's my straight line, shoulders come forwards. That's the only thing that's changing, is the shoulder angle. My toes slide down until enough weight is in front that it pulls me off the wall. And then I open the shoulders back while reaching towards the ceiling with the toes, ideally stacking hands, hips, and feet on top of each other. And then I push back to the wall again, and then I can go again for another rep and push up. Now, the beginner with the toe pull is going to tend to drag off the wall, and it's going to be a little bit flicky, or they might not actually pull all the way off the wall. But just learning to start to pull with the shoulders and only the shoulders is really good. No, definitely don't push yourself off the wall. Think that you're using your shoulders to pull from the wall, because I can do the same drill this way around. Yeah, I can come off the wall into a handstand. Now if my feet go backwards, my shoulders come forwards. That's the same movement. So I just pulled my feet to the wall by taking my shoulders forwards. So it's a little bit harder to get it right there, because you need to hold the freestanding balance, but you definitely don't want to be using the wall. So any of the wall balance drills, we don't want to use the wall to push ourselves off the wall. So no pushing off, either with the heel pull or the toe pull. Yeah, like breathing is going to be dependent on flexibility. So if this is really hard for me to put my hands above my head in that position while maintaining a straighter line, if that's really challenging, your breath is going to get involved. So your body's going to use your diaphragm and that for stability, and it's just harder work. So you're going to find that it's harder to breathe. And also, if you're doing anything that's more strength based in a handstand, now even just holding a handstand for some people is strength based, your obviously your breath is going to be affected as well, like it would do in any other strength movement.
If you do all the exercises in the videos, I'll be like you in handstands, please. Yeah, I mean, I'm 46 and I started training handstands at 37. Now at 37, I could hold like a 5-10 second consistent handstand. It was bent arms, banana position, legs apart, but that's where I was. So I've been doing this every day for 8 or 9 years. So yes, these are all the exercises and things that I've used, but it does take time and thousands of repetition. But I can jump up. I'm pretty cold, and I know on my right side, I can go into a one-arm handstand. So I can hold there. Now that's you're not going to get that from watching the videos and only doing it a few times. That's going to take years to get. I can't do that on my left consistently, so I'm still working on that. So it does take reps and reps and reps, thousands of hours. Don't think that watching a video of anyone's tutorial is going to give you splits in 30 days or a one-arm handstand in 6 months. It's going to take years to get the things. So with these videos, I'm just trying to give you the shortest route from my experience and what I've learned. That's one of the big things that has changed over the last few years is the content and the people that are putting things out is a lot more of it. So the content you can get for free now, and just from the amount of coaches there are about, is much higher than there was when I was doing it. Basically, I learned from Ido for most of the strength stuff and some of the basic handstand stuff, and then I went to other handstand coaches after that to try and learn and find information. It was really hard to find info. Is there an easier progression to get into a handstand like an elbow handstand? I take it you mean like a forearm stand. Forearm stands and things, headstands, things like that are great. Oh, can't do it with my hand. Are easier arm balances because the base of support is much bigger and you're lower to the floor. Yes, they can help towards the handstand, but if you want a handstand, you've really got to do handstand drills. So I'll be doing heel pulls and toe pulls and chest wall handstands and stuff like that specific to the handstand. I wouldn't be doing lots of things separate to the handstand. Took me months and years to gain certain things, but once we start these new skills to come, indeed, about 3 years in so far. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, everyone's is completely different. Their journey as well, and like flexibility was terrible for me. Like I was literally here when I started, and now I can get head to toe on one foot at a time. I can put elbows to the floor in a forward fold once I'm warmed up, but it took years to get. Okay, let me just warm up my handstand a little bit more. I'm just going to warm up a little bit of strength now. So I'm going to do handstand to planche. I'm just going to do a tuck planche. So before I go handstand to tuck planche, I just need to make sure I have a tuck planche. So it's a good way, whatever skill you're working, is to check the end points. So obviously the start is the handstand. So I know I've got the handstand. I've just done the handstand. We just need to check that I can do a planche. So with a normal tuck planche, I'm just going to warm it up by turning the hands out to the side. So external rotation. I'm going to protract. So I'm going to really round that upper back. And then I'm going to lean forwards to the point where my toes come off and try and keep the hip roughly level with the shoulders and hold there. And just check how that feels. Now that felt okay. So I now know I've got somewhere to go. So I can do the handstand. And I'm going to lower down to the tuck planche. If you're not at that level but want to do something similar, you could lower down to a crow position onto your elbows, or a crane or something with straight arms. That was the video I put up yesterday, was crane, which is like a straight arm version of the frog position or crow position. So now I'm just going to go handstand position. Now I have got my hands slightly wider and my hands are externally rotated. So when I come down, pass through the tuck, and I have my knees apart a little bit, roll down. So I'm going into flexion and protraction now, and then push up into my planche, and then hold. And come back down. Yeah, definitely the tuck planche negatives. So coming down to tuck planche or even going up will really help for shoulder progressions. And you can sort of ride the edge of your flexibility and your strength depending on what you're best at. Okay, so from tuck to advanced tuck, there's like a massive difference in distance. So basically, if you get rid of this, so your tuck planche, the easiest version for most people, unless they're very inflexible, is to go into a very tight tuck position. So you would be in like that position. So actually you would be up a little bit higher like that. So tight tuck position, you're basically not going to have much sticking out. So if your hands are there, I don't know if my drawings are very good. So knees, if your knees are roughly in line with your chest there in a tight tuck position, I don't know if you can see that very well. Then with the advanced tuck, so advanced tuck is seen as a flat back. This one would have a bit more of a rounding in the back. So flat back position, knees there, and I would have my feet up, would probably be the best position to go in. So you're going to be more like that. Now, obviously, the difference between this position when you're 90 degrees and you got a flat back, and this position when your knees are in your chest is massive. So the big difference between the advanced tuck position and the tuck is that distance. So the easiest way to do it is to slowly progress. So literally go from that knee position there. So if your knee is at that point there, if you took your knees to there without your feet going too far in that direction, because as you bring your knees back in that direction, your feet were going to go in that direction, which increases the lever arm. So the body gets longer, but it also increases the weight because the knees go backwards as well. So everything gets heavier in that direction. So if you can bring your heels up to your butt and just open your knees, then it helps the lever arm not getting so big. So that's a lot of talk. Let me see if I can demo it. So if a standard tuck position is knees by the chest, so that position, so there. Now, if I try and advance out for that to advanced tuck, look at the difference between it is that. So that's much, much harder. I'm not sure how good the quality was there, but there's a massive difference between those two. So if I just go, if my tight tuck position's there, if I do that, that's like more advanced tuck than the tight tuck, but miles away from being into a flat back advanced tuck. So with the planche progressions, same as the front lever and that tight tuck position, and then I gradually move the knees away from the chest all the way there to the advanced tuck. So there's that much movement. Just think that for the first month you're going to be there, then you might be there, and it might take 6 months to get there. It might take 9 months to get there, and it might take 12 months to get there. So think you're just going in increments. Now you can use things like bands and stuff around the hips. I'm not a big fan of doing that. If you've got a strong enough tuck planche for time under tension, I would just play around with sets and reps, find out what works best for you, going into tuck planche and advanced planche. That was a lengthy thing. I hope that made sense. Yeah, Paul, you're doing really well. Obviously, with your training, just consistency is the main thing. And everyone's journey is completely different. I sometimes have people come into class who tell me they've done hardly any training, and then suddenly they're, a week, 2 weeks later, they're doing amazing things. And then other people, it takes them 12 months to kick up to the wall. And they're following the same process. So it is very individual. Okay, so I'm going to have a bit more play with the planche now. I'm going to try going down into more of a frog position. So with the frog position for planche, I'm going to open the knees up a little bit, which makes it a bit more comfortable to open out for me, especially because I have the flexibility. So instead of staying legs together and then open into advanced tuck, and then going out to straddle, I'm going to go somewhere in between. So I'm going to have my legs like here, but so advanced tuck position, but knees apart. So again, I'm going to try doing it from handstand. So from a handstand position, again, I got my hands a little bit wide. I've externally rotated. So I'm going to start going in that frog position now, leaning forwards. So it's like an in-between, like that's probably the same sort of level as advanced tuck, but it starts to open the legs out towards a straddle planche, but more of a high hip straddle planche, which again, when we look at straddle planche, there's a big difference between planche positions. You could have a planche position that has hips that go up in the air. So you could have more of a movement culture planche that has a straddle planche like that. So this hip is high, relevant to the shoulders. Or you could have what's seen in calisthenics world as being a proper straddle planche, where basically you're like that in that position. But obviously, high hip straddle planche is much easier than that because of the lever arm. So same thing. So I'm just done with the frog position. I just done something similar, but it was like that, which is like a good in between. And I'm going to go into a bit more straddle planche now. I don't really feel my low back in planche. Maybe that's what's lacking for me to go into full planche. Or one of the things that's lacking, I find it's all upper back scapular, especially with these positions. You know, your tuck and your advanced tuck. You only got to look where it is in terms of where the stress is located. Yes, the low back is going to like open your legs out, but once you lock it in position, I don't really feel low back. I don't feel low back on back levers and stuff like that. It's more shoulders and upper back that I feel. Is reverse hand position for planche bad? I do my elbow planche with my fingers pointing back. No, not at all. I wish I'd done enough work, or I wish I have time to do a bit more of hands backwards, because I'd like to do that on a bar, because you can take your shoulders much further forwards if you have your hands pointing backwards on the planche. But I haven't conditioned it. It's a little bit harder on the bicep. But because I do most of my stuff relevant to the handstands, if you planche with your hands backwards, it's obviously really hard to do that while in a handstand. Everything's in the way. Rosie's in the way now. Obviously, I can't handstand like that. I haven't trained that, but I can handstand this way. So that's how I do it. So it's very much individual. If you want to do the cool one on the bar and stuff, where people hold the bar that way, you can definitely go much further forwards with the shoulders, but you have to condition that. I played around with it, got up to like a tuck planche pretty quickly with it, but anything more than that is very challenging. Okay, let's have a go now. I'm going to try and go handstand to some sort of straddle planche. Let's see what happens here. Now, what I'm going to do is, no, I won't do that. It might mess up the headphones. I was going to video it, but just so I could see what I'm doing. Okay, so you're not going to see with the camera angle. I want to use this carpet, so you're not going to see so much of my handstand, but hopefully you'll see the straddle planche. Try and really lock out my right elbow. My right elbow likes to bend. So open into straddle position. Try and keep the knees locked, elbows locked. So not a massive hold. Hips, legs are quite wide, and hip was a little bit too high, I think, from how it felt. But the arm stayed nice and straight. And that was what I was concentrating on. How far is Stauder press from tuck planche press? It all depends how you Stauder. If you're, I know you're very flexible. So if your straddle L-sit position is very high, so your hip position is very high, when you come through for your Stauder press, you won't need to use so much tuck planche. So then your tuck planche is not going to be so so close to your Stauder press. Where if your Stauder press is like mine, you're basically doing a tuck planche press on every rep because you're both dragging the feet and the hips through, and they tend to go around the back, so your shoulders have to go further forwards. So it depends on the individual on how planchy it is. Yeah, I wouldn't. You don't need to worry about core strength in planche. If you go through all the progressions towards the planche, your core will look after itself. You know, if you're doing dips and push-ups and all the other basic, still challenging but basic bodyweight strength movements, your core is going to be strong enough for the planche because you're going to progressively increase your planche. So as you progressively increase your planche, your that's all going to ramp up at the same time. Shoulders straightening exercise. The hang is probably the number one thing I go to get people to hang passively every day. So just hanging off a bar, because if you're like that over time, it's going to open you up. That would be my number one, and then number two, a foam roller. So laying over the foam roller. I done it at the start of this session. Do it every day. Rosie, come out of the way. There's a bug Rosie's trying to get. Get out. Yeah, so just doing the normal thoracic, lay on one of these every day in that position. Rosie, come out of the way. You can't even see me now. So in that one, arms above your head, rolling on there every day to open up before you do your training. They're my number two. They're my two most common ones I use. Okay, so in terms of my training now, I've got like 3 more minutes. I'm going to be online, and then I'm just going to finish off with more of those handstand to planche, and I'm going to try and max out on those. Any other questions while I'm on? Because I'm only going to be here for another two minutes. Says you're not keen on using bands for planche training, but you agree that helps with performing time and attention. Yeah, definitely. More so if people are working for tuck planche. Once I got to tuck planche level, I didn't really use the band. I've played with the band, but I haven't. My sets and reps have always been done without using the band. I'm sure if you get stuck on a certain progression, then having the band allows you to explore and get a bit more time under tension in it. But it's like a thin line between using the band too much and it being a bit false. It's a bit like learning to handstand. Once you've got that 10-20 seconds, I would do heel pulls and toe pulls against the wall to keep making that stronger. But in terms of your freestanding holds, I would always just be freestanding in the middle of the room as much as possible, as long as you could build up time under tension there. So it's sort of riding that edge, using the assistance just enough so you can do the real thing and not get caught up in the exercise too much. That's really common, to get caught up with the drill and you're not doing enough of the real thing. Okay, let's try one more handstand to planche. We'll try and max the position a little bit more. Right arm is bending a little bit on that one. I was actually worried I was going to hit my head on the wall. I'm a bit restricted on the setup at the moment in here. No, just hanging off a bar. So just off holding onto a bar, hand shoulder width apart, or even closer if you've got the flexibility. So you'll be hanging off a straight bar in that position, biceps by the ears, and hang for time. Anyone who's stuck in their upper back helps to open everything out. Yeah, you just got to ride the edge of intensity with how often you train. So I train every day in some way. Like I said yesterday, I only done a few handstands, and quite an easy session for me. Probably like, I don't know, 5 different handstand variations, and that was it because I'd driven in the car and was like tired. So I took it easier yesterday. Today, this is my session, but I've also taught 2 handstand classes and done some PTs. And I'm going to do like 4 or 5 more sets to finish this off, to like tick the box that I've done my straight arm session today. But you've got to ride the intensity. So if you're getting frustrated, like you said, you're getting frustrated, you just need to make sure that your program has enough work and volume in the easier section. So, if I'm teaching someone to do handstand push-ups, well, there might be a few reps at the partial range or working some freestyle ones, but we really want to be doing toes on the wall and doing 5 sets of 5 reps of the work, which is easier exercises for more reps and sets to build that, just get enough volume of work done. Most people hang out on the bits that are really hard. It's like me doing all my sets of full planche. I can only hold full planche for like a second, if that. So it'd be pointless doing that constantly. I'll be better off doing tuck planche and straddle planche for my sets of reps. Okay, guys, I'm going to have to leave. It's 5 o'clock. I'm going to do those sets, and then I'm going to go pick up my little boy up from daycare. Stick any comments or questions below, especially if you're not watching this live. My intention is to do these every Monday and Friday. It's just that I was away yesterday. I'm going to play around with the time so I hit different time zones, and just trying to help people out live because it's a little bit more easier to do it in person and a bit more real. You can actually see how I train as opposed to the fancy stuff that I try and upload. Cool. Let me know if you have any more questions. I will obviously try and get back to everyone's comments on YouTube, and I'll speak to you soon. Thanks, guys.